So we need to talk about something very, very important in gaming, and that is the difference between a remaster and a remake. And the reason why I bring this up is because last night, I'm lying in bed, I'm warm, I'm cozy, I've just taken my melatonin gummy, I'm ready for bed. And naturally, like an idiot, I grab my phone and I start doom scrolling on Twitter because I have nothing else better to do, and I come across these tweets talking about Horizon Zero Dawn getting a remake. And there's tons of people complaining it's stupid, it doesn't need a remake, Sony's just doing a cash grab, they've run out of ideas. And naturally, I'm pretty baffled because A, I haven't heard about these rumors of the game getting a remake, and secondly, the game came out in 2017. It's still relatively new, it still looks pretty decent, it plays great. In fact, there are elements of Zero Dawn's gameplay and its mechanics that I kind of prefer over Forbidden West. However, that is neither here nor there. So everyone's throwing around that word remake, so I decided to do a little bit of digging, and I come across an article from the fine folks over at Video Games Chronicle, VGC, who I have sourced many times on this channel already. And I tend to believe their sources. They usually have pretty concrete evidence in regards to these types of news stories. And their sources are stating that the game is not getting remade, however, it is getting remastered. Now, remade and remastered are two completely different things that unfortunately have had their definitions muddied recently, and I blame The Last of Us Part 1 remake on PlayStation 5 for all of that. Now, what am I talking about? Well, first, there's the differences between the two things, remaster and remake. A remaster is usually taking a pre-existing game and just basically cleaning it up for a current new generation of hardware. So for example, this dates back to the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 era, where you have a game like Gears of War, which came out on 360, and when the Xbox One came out, they had a remastered version of that game come out. I believe it was called Gears of War Ultimate, which had gameplay improvements, better graphics, higher resolutions, and frame rates. It was an overall remaster, and remasters are really nothing new. Spider-Man got remastered from the PS4 version for the PS5 version. Now, that was a full-price remaster, however, it did include the game's DLC, which surprisingly a lot of people skipped out on, which is unfortunate because there is some really great gold in that DLC. Another justifiable one, in my personal opinion, is the Ghost of Tsushima remaster. The game came out in the summer of 2020, and the following year they released a PS5 Director's Cut version that was essentially a remaster. So it had higher resolutions, higher frame rates, quality of life improvements with the gameplay, but it was also bundled with brand new DLC. And there's a little bit of a caveat here. So for new players, the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut on PS5 was $70. However, for people who had bought the game already, if I remember correctly, it was a $30 upgrade. $20 for the Iki Island DLC, and then $10 for the quote-unquote privilege to upgrade from the PS4 to PS5 version of the game. Which, let's be honest here, that extra $10 is BS. Sony shouldn't be charging their consumers to spend $10 extra just to play on a new console. So I praise people like Capcom and Square Enix for doing the right things for some of their most biggest games, like FF7 Remake. If you wanted to play the PS4 to PS5 version of that game, it was a free upgrade. Capcom with RE2 and 3 Remake, and 7 free upgrades to the current gen versions of those games. Great. Awesome, lovely. Now, as for what a remake is a game that is literally rebuilt from the ground up and nearly everything has been changed. The story itself, the overall theme of the game, might be kind of similar to the original game, but the story beats and how they unfold and how you get from point A to B to C to D to F to G might have changed. Gameplay mechanics are going to change. The graphics are going to be retooled and overhauled. New music, a new script to go along with those changing story beats. Resident Evil 2 Remake is the perfect example of a remake done right. That game was remade from the ground up. The core story of what Leon and Claire go through is pretty much the same as the original game, but those story beats and how they unfold are very different. New scenarios are added, sometimes new character moments are added. The gameplay is completely different. Enemies have been retooled and re-overhauled. Music has been added and changed. Again, it's been changed from the ground up, where nearly almost everything is now different. It's a completely brand new game that can stand on its own while still paying homage to what came before. Ghost of Tsushima, I say, is justified because if you're buying the game brand new, it was $70 for everyone. If you had bought the game previously and then bought that $30 bundle, it was $90. So you were technically saving money, but also, Ghost of Tsushima is a fantastic game that is packed to the brim with content. You have the base game and a ton of side quests you can do. You had the Iki Island DLC, which was phenomenal, which also had a ton of extra stuff to do. And also, the game has a free-to-play multiplayer mode with the Ghost of Tsushima Legends mode. So I feel like that version is justifiable. Now, let's get back to The Last of Us Part 1 and how it's muddied the waters for the term remake. Now, from my understanding, based on what I've read and what I've seen with some of the behind-the-scene dev diaries for The Last of Us Part 1 remake, they didn't really remake the game. Elements of the game's engine were remade purely to change the game's graphics and lighting system. But other than that, the game is the exact same. The story's the same, dialogue is the same, the gameplay is the same, combat encounters, enemy AI are all seemingly the same as they were from the original game, as well as the PS4 remastered version. The only thing that changed were the graphics, and they did add some accessibility options, which is nice. And look, don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on Naughty Dog. The stuff they're able to do with their games on a technical level is straight up science magic. How they're able to get their games to look and run as good as they do on a PS4 base console is still mind-blowing. And the accessibility features are great. I hope we get more of that in the future with every game that comes out. But if we're being honest here, I really think that game is not a remake. It's a glorified $70 remaster, because all that really changed were the graphics. Now, why are they calling it a remake? Well, I think they want it to seem bigger than it is. They're trying to justify that $70 price tag and the game's existence. But also, there is an HBO TV show coming out based on The Last of Us, so Sony most likely wants something shiny and new to go along with that TV show, because there might be people who watch the show who then want to revisit the game or play the game for the first time, and boom, you got a brand new, beautiful game that's more in line with what Part 2 looks like. So that's why I think those two terms have gotten really muddied, unfortunately. So when news of a Horizon Zero Dawn remaster comes out, everyone immediately jumps to what they did with The Last of Us, and it's just going to be a glorified remaster that has changed graphics, and that's it. And as of right now, we don't know what this is going to be. Will they charge $70 for a game that is essentially just better looking, that does have some quality of life improvements, or is this going to be a big ass bundle? Because there are also rumors that a Horizon multiplayer game is in the works as well, and this is where I kind of go back and forth. Now, if this is a situation where it's a Horizon Zero Dawn remaster, where it's upgraded graphics, they change elements of the gameplay, they change elements of the overall mechanics of the world, and it's overall just a bigger quality of life thing with accessibility options added in, okay, I don't know if I can justify $70 for that, because it's sort of a Last of Us situation, but if they take that multiplayer mode and bundle it into that remaster, that I can kind of see being justifiable for $60 to $70, because you're technically getting two games in one. And as someone who really enjoys the Horizon Zero Dawn and Forbidden West games, the multiplayer aspect is really exciting. Being able to play like a Monster Hunter-esque game that's much faster with its traversal and combat mechanics is really cool. The idea of fighting an Apex Thunderjaw with some friends is bonkers. That gets me really, really excited and jazzed. However, an interesting case study for that, which is going to damper things and pour some water on it, is The Last of Us Part 1 Remake, which we keep coming back to. The original Last of Us, as well as the remastered version on PS4, did come bundled with a multiplayer mode, the Factions mode. And when The Last of Us Part 1 was re-released on PS5, the quote-unquote remake abandoned the multiplayer. But Naughty Dog and Sony have also revealed that they're working on a standalone Last of Us multiplayer game. So because of that, I would think that this Horizon multiplayer game that is being rumored is most likely going to be a standalone thing and not bundled in with the remaster. So trying to justify all this is just all up in the air, because we don't really have any details. For some people who are huge fans of Horizon, that $70 is going to be nothing if they get a really cool remaster of the original game. But it really depends on how much they are willing to change with this remaster. But it's also important to, again, remember, it's being touted as a remaster and not a remake so far. So those two words are getting thrown around quite a bit, and it's kind of annoying to see them being used interchangeably like they're the same thing. But again, I blame The Last of Us Part 1. But also, the Horizon Zero Dawn situation could be a Last of Us type thing, where they do have a TV show at Netflix in the works for Horizon Zero Dawn. So Sony most likely wants to do with this game what they did with The Last of Us. They want a brand new, much prettier, updated version to coincide with the release of that TV show so they can market it. People watch the show, they like Aloy, they like the show, they go and play the PS5 remaster of this game, which, you know, is basically just printing money for them at this point. And the game itself, Horizon, is a pretty huge franchise. Zero Dawn across PS4 and PC has sold over 20 million copies, which is pretty bonkers. A game like Ghost of Tsushima, which I think is better, hasn't sold 20 million copies. That's probably nearing the 9 million mark at this point, but it's pretty bonkers. Everything's up in the air, and I don't know what's going on. Who am I? Where am I? What year is it? So, I am Curious Corduroy. That is the video. Please leave any of your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. What do you guys think of this rumor of Zero Dawn getting a possible remaster? How do you feel about the Last of Us quote-unquote remake that came out? And what are your overall thoughts on the current situation of remasters and remakes, and how much companies are willing to charge for them? I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.